Ladies and gentlemen, dear members of Parliament, welcome to our conference. My name is Edda Castello. I am the head of the supervisory board of the German Association of Insured, the BDV in Hamburg. I have been working on issues of private retirement provision and particularly of life insurances for nearly 4 decades at the Public Center of Consumer Protection in Hamburg. For my work as a lawyer, the issues of better transparency of terms and conditions of insurance contracts, life and non-life, the issues of remuneration systems of insurance distributors, less commissions, more regular fees, or the issues of adequate profit participation of life policyholders were always crucial. The reason why we wanted to organize here and now this conference on the new Pan-European pension products are obvious. BDV has supported the idea of creating a new supervisory framework for a simple, transparent, and cost-efficient retirement product from its very beginning. We believe that the existing private pension products do not respect these 3 basic requirements, especially under the harsh conditions of the ongoing low interest rate phase. After the publication of the initial EU regulation last year, EIOPA has now published the Level 2 regulation for PEPP. We are very glad that Gabriel Bernardino, chair of EIOPA, and Dragos Pislaru, rapporteur for PEPP in the European Parliament, have accepted our invitation to this conference. They will be interviewed by Axel Kleinlein, spokesman of BDV and current president of Better Finance. In the second part of our conference, there will be a panel discussion moderated by Christian Gülich, BDV's EU Policy Officer and member of EIOPA Stakeholder Group of Occupational Pensions. The participants of the panel are mostly chosen from this stakeholder group. But first, we start with 2 presentations. The first one is given by Guillaume Prasch, Managing Director of Better Finance. The second will be presented by Jan Sebo, Professor of Economics from Slovakia. Last but not least, we have more than 200 participants. This figure alone shows the crucial importance of our conference. I wish you all a successful meeting and hand over to Arnaud.
Thank you very much, Edda. I will now not take any more time. I will just give the floor to Guillaume Prasch. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. I am very happy to be with you this afternoon. I would like first very briefly to explain a bit more maybe to you the title of our conference today, European Pension Savers under Financial Repression. Is PEPP a solution? What is financial repression? The term was introduced in 1973 by 2 Stanford economists, Edward Shaw and Ronald McKinnon, and they define it as follows. It is comprising policies that result in savers earning returns below the rate of inflation in order to provide cheap loans to companies and to governments, reducing the burden of repayments. And they added, it can be particularly effective at liquidating government debt. In fact, today we have reached an unprecedented high in financial repression with a combination of the European Central Bank monetary policy and also, which is also often forgotten, by EU prudential rules, but also for long-term and pension savers by other issues that I will mention. First, the ECB policy. As you know, the effect is that now the main EU sovereign bonds, at least for the larger economies, are now not low They are negative, and they have been negative for some time. This converts into huge subsidies to banks and to indebted member states via these negative interest rates, and also via the more massive than ever purchases of government debt by the European Central Bank. Don't forget to combine this with EU prudential rules for banks and insurers, which de facto forces them also, for prudential reasons, because for capital ratios, they are instructed that EU sovereign bonds bear no risk at all. So they are this way de facto forced to put in their portfolio EU sovereign bonds, including in pension products. In fact, you will see that all this results in a high detriment for long-term and pension savers, as it was already embedded in the economist definition of financial repression almost 50 years ago. But today you have to combine, unfortunately, other current issues. First one is the systematic exploitation of a cognitive bias known by economists, again, as monetary illusion. And this systematic exploitation is done by policymakers and by financial services providers. Monetary illusion is the fact that, as you know, most citizens are not fully aware or totally unaware of the long-term negative impact of inflation on their purchasing power. I say very systematic exploitation because in my long career as looking at these issues, only to my knowledge, OECD and Better Finance are reporting, disclosing long-term returns, not in nominal terms, but in real terms, meaning deducting the impact of inflation and showing to citizens as long-term and pension savers the real variation in purchasing power of their lifetime savings. If you add to this that in most EU member states, taxes on long-term investment incomes are usually on nominal returns, not on the real ones, that leads also to repression and to damage for savers. Also, you have often too high and often not properly disclosed costs. That will be certainly one feature we're going to discuss about the PEPP, Pan-European Personal Pension Product. If I take one example, for example, of a unit-linked insurance in France, the average cost, if you are exposed to a unit in equities, is 3% per year, 3% per year. And of course, accumulating year after year. By the way, this allows me to tell you that Better Finance will publish next week. Unfortunately, we wanted to do it today, but we will be slightly delayed. But watch out, next week we will release our 2020 research report on the real returns of long-term and pension savings in Europe. And that will further show and give a lot of evidence of the damages of financial repression on the long-term returns of pensions. Also, the pension products are very complex, often too complex, and the market is very fragmented. Also, there are too often inadequate disclosures on the impacts of cost and inflation and on the real net performance. And so it's not only that there is exploitation of monetary illusion, but it's hidden very often. And I advise you to watch at the end our video on the PEPP capital guarantee scam, as we call it a bit brutally, sorry, at the end of this conference. If you add then also conflicts of interest in distribution, which often leads to the fact that the most expensive funds or the funds with most commissions are promoted and sold versus lower cost alternatives like indexed ETFs, exchange traded funds, which are low cost, or direct investments in listed stocks and bonds. All of this, you have the ideal recipe for a growing pension adequacy and for destroying the long-term value of pension savings. We believe and hope PEPP can address several of the issues I just listed for you very quickly. And we are going to see if we are right and how to make PEPP a workable and effective tool to alleviate the pains of financial repression for EU citizens as pension savers. For this, I am really very pleased and very honored to really have a dream team today to discuss this. So I will not go back to each panelist and each keynote speaker because Eda already alluded to it, but I'm really very happy. I can tell you it's the best mix of highly expert people and policymakers that we could dream of for this very important issue discussion. And my great pleasure is first to introduce Professor Jan Sebo, one of these great experts on pensions, because he's an expert on pensions for the Slovak government, for the European Commission, and for the European Insurance and Occupational Pension Authority. He's the Vice Dean of Matej Bell University in Slovakia, and we are very honored to have him as a member of the Better Finance Scientific Council. Before I give him the floor, and Arno, I hope I'm keeping good with time, I would like, as Arno kindly reminded me, to tell you about the questions, the online questions that you can access. There are 4 of them. The first one is, will PEPP encourage active savings for, thank you, it is shown here, for private retirement provision by citizens of the EU. As you can read, the second is, which financial industry branch will be the most important product provider for PEPP? Of course, according to you. Third one will the cap on costs, hotly debated issue, and I'm sure will be in the panel for the basic PEPP. Will it give a competitive advantage over other pension products? And then number 4 and last, which risk mitigation technique would be the most efficient against financial repression? I please kindly ask you to answer these questions online as soon as possible, because they will be, your responses might be used by the speakers and the panelists to comment on. And lastly, I would like to give a big thank to the BDV and Better Finance team who have made this possible, and especially all the technical aspects which were handled by the Better Finance team. I hope I kept in my 10 minutes and I wish you a great continuation, and I give the floor to Professor Jan Sebo. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Guillaume, for introducing me. I feel very honored to have this opportunity to participate at this really interesting conference where we all will be discussing when the baby will be really born and how the baby will look like. So basically, I have prepared a short presentation for you where I can address only several things regarding the PEPP product. However, we all have huge expectations from this product. Why is that? Because this is the only product that can all of us make Europeans. We will be united by one product. We can travel, we can work everywhere in Europe. Basically, we can save for our retirement within one product. So basically, there are lots of areas that we can discuss. However, there is one thing that is really important for all the savers, and that is, what kind of information about this product will I be able to get on a regular basis, and how should I cope with it, and how should I respond to it? Well, everybody basically expects that the baby will be born in the 21st century, and that also the regulation will be basically written for the 21st century technologies and for the 21st century financial products. Well, what happens when the regulation hits the advanced technologies of the 21st centuries and the behavioral science? So let's have a closer look at that. At this slide, basically you see what has been provided to maybe all of the pension savers across EU. It is either paper or electronic statement that you receive on an annual basis. This is just an example of a pension provider in Slovakia. What's wrong with this? I have lots of information, I have lots of numbers. Basically, me as a saver, I should be able to understand the whole product and what should I expect when I retire. The problem is, this is still static. Once you put their information, you have to be absolutely sure that this information is understandable and it creates something that we desperately need, the knowledge. If I may ask for another slide. Well, we all know that we as a savers, basically, we are not fully rational. There are problems with hyperbolic. When you dig deeper into the research, you will find out that this is almost always because you don't have either enough information. You do have enough information, but they are so complex that you are not able to process them. And therefore, basically, you don't understand the numbers. You are trying to postpone the financial decisions. You are really afraid to make this decision. And therefore, you need the information to be presented to you in a form as a guide or something like a mentor that will guide you through the whole process of saving. So let's have a look at the 21st century technologies and 21st century's pension benefit statements. So if I may ask for another slide. When reading the Annex 2 of the presented regulatory technical standards, there is a really interesting, let's say, template for benefit statements that gives us information about the product, about how much I have saved, what can I expect when I retire in Section 2, how has my PEPP changed in the last 12 months, and what are the key factors affecting the performance of your PEPP. The Article 1 of the proposed regulatory technical standards says that, well, this basically all of the statements and all PEPP providers shall comply with the section order, titles, and presentation tools or charts and icons set out in the template, which, however, does not fix parameters regarding the length of the individual sections and the placing of page breaks. So there is one question that still is not answered. Does this unification of the benefit statement and information provided within a benefit statement gives us the knowledge on demand we require? Because once you have time and you started to save for this product, and basically there is any kind of incentive that forces you, well, now is the time that I have to think about my product. Do I have it set up correctly? Do I have a tool? And does my benefit statement help me to make the right decision at the moment that I am able to make this decision? If I may ask you for that slide. When you lock down the researchers during the coronavirus, well, they start working. So we started working on a platform that will help individuals to connect all different kind of pensions and long-term savings products under one platform, and they will be able to see what they can expect during the retirement across the whole pension schemes. This has been prepared for the Slovakia, but we tend to provide this kind of service also to other countries. So, but when we were designing this kind of 21st technology or 21st century platform, we already thought about the PEPP on individual pension scheme products, and we already tried to design it in a way that will basically fit the regulation. We were not really sure how the regulation at the very end will look like, or RTS will at the very end look like, but at least we tried to provide three-layered information on Article 10, how much have I saved in my PEPP? On Article 10, 1D, what will I receive when I retire? Article 10, 1G, the key factors affecting the performance of my PEPP, or Article 10.1F, how has my PEPP changed over the or in the last 12 weeks? However, at the very beginning, we thought, and we tested it behaviorally, that the savers really need a key message. So we have prepared an example of a typical saver, and basically we run the typical product, Basic PEPP product, in order to see how this information I provided. So when you scroll down and you look at the value of my savings today, we provided all the required information. However, then we found out that the PEPP benefit statements template omits the vehicle information. It means when we followed the proposed template, we found out that me as a saver have no information what kind of product, or basically what is the pension vehicle I'm using to drive me through the accumulation phase into my retirement. So if I may move forward, one more slide. This is the most important section. When you look at the Annex 2 benefit statements, you will see that there is Section 2 pension projections. However, these pension projections need to be presented in a way that will create something that we understand as a knowledge and awareness on expected pension income. And for this, you need to provide it in a way that people will start understanding. So basically, you will have to answer the questions: how long will I save? What part of my savings should I allocate in the growth fund, or how should I allocate my contributions? What will be the value of my savings? Of course, we have all three scenarios, and again, yes, really, I have to see what will be my monthly pensions, of course, inflation adjusted. However, really important thing is when you start presenting this kind of information to the savers or to the users, you have to have in mind one thing. We all know that my wage will develop over time. And the thing is that if we present this number, what could be my monthly pension, in a way that is inflation adjusted, it's not quite enough. You still have to work with this number to present it that is also wage adjusted. It means that you will be able to present a number that basically reflects your current wage and your current income or living standard, because then this number will be much better understandable by users. So if I may ask you for another slide. This is something that only online tools can bring, and unfortunately, the static, even if it's electronic, a static benefit statements will never be able to provide something that we desperately need, and it is knowledge on demand. Once you provide via online tools, online platforms, ability to consider the savings objective, it means how to improve the situation and to try it out either by setting the saving target or changing the savings parameters, means increasing contributions, and tying these contributions either to your wage or to another factors. This is the part when the knowledge on the functioning of the product and expected pension benefits is created, trained, improved, and maintained. It means from the behavioral point of view, you will be able to get what is desperately needed, and it is knowledge on demand, or knowledge at the point when it is needed. And I might just maybe, remind you about whether you can feel the contrast with the Article 10.1G, where the key factors affecting the performance of the PEPP should be presented. Well, the information shall refer to the past performance and as allocated, shall provide for the provision for 10 years. However, this is only the past performance. Once you're able to see the past performance with the projections that are really understandable, this is the way how, and you provide this kind of, let's say, a tool or a toy for the consumer via online platform. You are increasing the awareness and ability to learn and ability to understand how should I respond and how should I finance my PEPP product. And if I may ask to move to another slide.
Sorry, Jan, for interrupting. Could you please slowly start wrapping up because we're a little bit over time. Thank you.
This is something we haven't thought about when creating a PEPP. And this is one last slide. Let's imagine that you have a platform that is able to basically connect your state pension or pay-as-you-go pillar, your funded pension and occupational pension statements and the individual PEPP statements, and under one roof provide you what you can expect at the very end and provide you with so-called pension traffic. Basically, this is what we desperately need. It is a consumer-driven platform that is able to connect all the products under one roof, and I think the PEPP might be the driver to let rise of this kind of consumer-driven fintechs and platforms that will be able to provide information across the whole pension schemes under one roof, and maybe to bring you the information whether you will be okay when you retire or not. And if I may ask you for the last slide. So the last slide is the project that we have developed is in foreign general. It's for the Slovak Republic, but we are really keen to expand to other countries because this is consumer driven and led by researchers. And this platform should be able to provide information on various products, and I'm really looking forward to all your comments and questions, and I'm really looking forward for the baby to be born. So thank you, and looking for all your questions.
Thank you very much, Jan. We'll pass on immediately to the interview of Gabriel Bernardino, the EIOPA chair, and Dragos Pislaru, MEP. The interview will be done by Axel Kleinlein of PDV. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me or see me, hopefully, but my video is still stopped by, yeah, perhaps it's, yeah, now it works. Thank you, Guillaume, and thank you, Jan, for the very, very interesting and enlightening input you gave us. And so shortly from here, from Hamburg, a very warm welcome from me too. I'm Axel Kleinlein, and I'm a little bit schizophrenic at the moment because I'm here in two different roles. I'm here as the managing director and spokesman of PDV, and at the same time as the president of Better Finance. Gladly, the positions of both consumer organizations are strongly aligned, so there's no problem arising from these two roles. I think this is a very important moment to discuss PEPP, and especially on the perspective of the financial repression. So the launch of the propositions for level 2 of PEPP is quite at the right moment. EIOPA published it about 1 month ago, and it is a little bit also the result of many discussions we had on different occasions. For example, in the stakeholder groups where my colleague, Dr. Christian Gülich, participated, or in the PEPP expert group where Stefan Wojciech of Better Finance and I tried to give impulses. So these discussions have been very technical. Now, after the launch of the drafts for the technical standards, the discussion is back on the political realm. The European Commission, the European Council, and the Parliament are now in charge to discuss and to decide. Therefore, I'm very happy to welcome the first two panelists to start the discussion. The first participant is Gabriel Bernardino. Welcome, Gabriel. Hola, bem-vindo. You're chairman of EIOPA, the European Insurance and Occupational Pension Authority, since its beginning in 2011. Before, you were general director of the National Competent Authority in Portugal, and at the same time, chairman of the managing board of CAIOPS, the predecessor of EIOPA. You're a mathematician and actuary, That's nice, like me. And the second welcome goes to Dragos Pislaru, Bine ați venit. You're a member of the European Parliament since last year as a Romanian member of the Renew Europe group. Before, you have been Minister of Labour, Family and Social Protection in Bucharest for 2 years. Particularly important is that you're now rapporteur on PEPP for the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs of the European Parliament. You're an economist, and that means you understand how to read figures too. Welcome you both. And whenever I mention PEPP in some discussions concerning retirement provision, some of the following questions are raised quite very often. Where will PEPP be a success? In which member states do you expect a vivid PEPP market? Who will provide PEPP solutions? Will the insurance industry be the main player? When will PEPP start? At the very first possible moment, or will most of the providers wait until the first movers gained first experiences? What kind of risk mitigations will be developed, and how will PEPP be explained to consumers and customers in order to make them understand what PEPP is about? To summarize these questions into the first question I want to ask you is, what do you both think are the major principles and objectives of PEPP, and are they fulfilled in EIOPA's recently published draft of technical standards? And because Gabriel, it was you publishing it, I'm very curious what Dragos is answering to this question.
So, who's starting? Shall I start, or?
I'm very curious what you say, okay. And then Bernardino can respond.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much, BDV with Better Finance, for the invite. I salute Gabriel Bernardino, EIOPA chair. It's good to see you here. I mean, I just need to do a very brief disclaimer. This is a Chatham House thing. I'm not representing the views of the committee. I'm here for, do what normally the members of the parliament should do. That is interact with stakeholders, hear views, engage in debates, and getting, enriched out of that in order to work together with my colleagues in the Econ committee and come up with a better solution for the EU citizens. Now, we are here talking about regulation, and obviously, when you ask a regulator if something would be a success, I mean, it depends. I think that it's quite early to say. I believe that in some member states which have a more dynamic but developing markets in the area, I mean, particularly some of the newer member states of the Union can actually benefit more because they don't have the third pillar that develop. And I mean, being a Minister of Labour, I was in charge with the pensions of the first pillar, and I was actually also looking to see how we can actually develop the other two pillars, the second and the third, in order to have a more balanced system. Just to try to elaborate just a little bit on what you mentioned. So I do believe that we need to strike this very, very important balance in between allowing the market actors to be interested, have the incentives to run the product. And so, I mean, I think that the industry, in my view, should be the main player. This is not something that we are just designing on a board and then hope that, we throw it in the market and it works. So we need to see that the industry would be incentivized. And I think that there are quite a few incentives there. I believe strongly in the common market. I believe that there would actually deliver a true single market for personal pensions and, facilitate the cross-border distribution. This will allow actors to have benefits of scale and asset pooling. And I think that's very important, honestly, rather than fragmented markets with, country by country and different regulations. So there are incentives for the industry to go along. On the same time, obviously, and this is, the second or third part of a longer question, let's put it this way. I think that in terms of risk mitigation, this is a role of us, the regulators, to be sure that the citizens are well represented. I mean, Gabriel Bernardino is representing, the citizen from a technical perspective, and he has the job to oversee that. I have the job to actually talk to citizens and represent their interest. And indeed, we see, by the way, this is one of the few moments in which I hear good things about economists, of being an economist. So yes, indeed, as an economist, I read figures and I have a good idea of what we're talking about. But this is not actually all the time that I'm getting congratulated for that. But anyway, let me get back to it. So indeed, we are talking about markets, but we are also talking about market failures and asymmetry of information. And also we are talking about we can provide some guarantee for the people as well to do that. I've heard, quite. I think that is going to the populist side and it's over-regulating. So actually, this is by saying that I believe that if we work together in the next couple of months, and even because I think that getting the signals from the industry, but also looking at what EIOPA is doing and gathering the information on, and trying to see that the savers will be encouraged to go on the third pillar, that would be actually the road ahead. It's actually something that would be useful, and I believe that there is room of improvement, as Jan Sebo has actually mentioned. Just to end that, I think indeed that for me, representing the citizens, to have this possibility that is described in the key information document, and what is the product part, is actually key for me as a member of the parliament. To be very, very, very important to be able to tell the citizens that this is something that will have the level of transparency that is desired, and is not something that would be just a black box. Considering that the ordinary citizens are not savvy enough in economics to understand the product. I mean, that would be a very wrongful assumption. So we need actually to work on that, and we also need to work on a broader thing, which is enlarging the culture, let's say the overall awareness about finance and financial education of the population throughout Europe as well. So this is something that we need to do even besides this particular topic of PEPP. A little bit of a longer answer that I wanted initially, but it was a long question actually. So, yeah, thank you.
So thank you. Well, I tried to get a feeling about how you think about the current situation with PEPP. And Gabriel, what do you think about the major principles? And do you think you did a good job?
No, thank you very much, Axel, for your kind invitation, of course. And by the way, congratulations to Better Finance and to BDV for organizing this event. I think it's quite important at this point in time. And really, when you ask me, have we done a good job? Of course, I couldn't respond differently. Of course, I think all the work in the PEPP has been, as you know it, already for many, many years. I think it has been a very good example on how European economic policy can and should be done. We are having an engagement from the citizens, from the representatives of consumers, probably as in never other type of project, and I'm quite happy with that. We have had engagement from industry. You mentioned, of course, all the work that we have done for this advice and for these technical statements with the EIOPA practitioner panel. All our stakeholder groups engaged within, huge involvement with members of parliament. So I think that we have been doing really a good job on how we should legislate at European level. Now, are things perfect? Nothing will never be perfect, as we know, but I think we have a very strong basis for the PEPP to be a success because of building up within this environment. And I just wanted to briefly come out to the points that Guillaume made about where are we nowadays and if we have achieved the objectives. Because since the beginning, and you remember when I presented this idea of having a PEPP back in 2012, 8 years ago. The basis for that was what do we have as we have a market which is hugely fragmented, high complexity of the products. We have a market with a lot of lack of transparency, let's be honest. And finally, we have a market where we have high costs and low returns. And of course, within an environment of low interest rates, this is of course hugely penalizing. So since the beginning, the three main objectives of the PEPP would be simple, transparent, and cost effective. And I think that this is the kind of elements that we need to, at each stage, look and see, and are we going in the right direction in here? And I think we're going in the right direction. If you look at complexity, we have the PEPP as a default product, basically with the basic PEPP. We develop default investment options with standardization that we have defined also more right now, which helps to build this quality label and to have more trust for the citizens, but also at the same time, for the providers to reach better scales and so to put costs down. I think that's very important. If you look at transparency, we have these documents, the PEPP Kit and the PEPP benefit statement, one for pre-contractual, another one for annual information. They were tested with consumers, probably not, but I think it's a huge step if you compare it with what is the type of information that is now out there for the consumers for long-term products. The documents are appealing, are put in a way that people can engage much better, and definitely they are digital. They go in a digital way, which is the way that, of course, the young generations will deal with a product like the PEPP. Most importantly, also in terms of transparency, we bring, I think, for the first time in European legislation, very clear definition and disclosure of the costs. And now it's very clear, you have administration, investment, distribution costs, and on top of that, you have the costs to provide guarantees if they are there in the product. And there's a very clear definition of what can be included in each one of these, and they need to be transparently disclosed. Finally, on cost effectiveness and on the long-term returns. Of course, one of the major difficulties and issues was the cost cap. Let's talk about it. We came out with a clear advice of having an all-inclusive approach in the sense that, all the costs, all these administrative investment, the costs of the costs of distribution, all of them need to be, of course, disclosed, but separately is the issue of the cost of the guarantee. Why? Because the guarantee is a product feature. It's a different product feature that in relation to the other type of normal, objective from the PEPP. But still the consumer can see very clearly what is the premium that he pays to have this guarantee if he has it on the top. Another issue that it was very difficult to solve was this issue of the initial advice, the cost of initial advice. And this is something which I think it's very important because of course we want the PEPP to be there for all types of consumers, not only for the ones that have a lot of money, to put in the first years. And that we will see that, of course, the cost of initial advice can be within the one. So the PEPP, and especially, to be honest, from my side, the PEPP to be there for, the lowest part of our society that have less income and that needs to start saving, even if it is small amounts. And so this could make it impossible if you put the cost of initial advice, which is always a little, an amount which is a higher amount, let's be honest, because of all the work that needs to be done. Now, we included the cost of initial advice because we really believe that it makes sense, but we give this possibility of having the amortization of that cost of initial advice during the first 5 years, so that the customer will pay that initial advice during 5 installments and not at the beginning. I think that makes sense and that could go in the right direction. And finally, on returns, which of course it's a fundamental point linked to the costs. I think what we bring, which is completely new, I think right now in relation to the PEPP, is this focus on the more long-term nature of the pension product that needs to come with more long-term investments and to the use, of course, of capital markets. And I think that this links very well to the ambition of the PEPP. And what we have done is that we have done a lot of stochastic simulations, and we work very closely to the OECD and with a number of academics. and to see how can we describe this ambition in a way that it's good for consumers, but also it gives the possibility for the market to provide products that could be more appealing. And in that, I want to point out that the ambition that we have included in there is at least to outperform inflation. And this links, I think, clearly to what Guillaume was saying at the beginning. On the one side, I understand that the industry cannot guarantee that you go beyond inflation, but I think we were very attentive to the fact that for consumers, of course, inflation is fundamental. So what we put in there in terms of this ambition, that should be the definition of the investment policies, is at least to outperform inflation. And this is also, of course, very important in the way that the risk mitigation techniques are defined. As Dragos mentioned, of course, from our side as regulators, we need to make sure that we build a framework that gives trust to the consumers in terms of mitigating the risks. And that is what we have done with the risk mitigation techniques, be it life cycle, be it reserves, be it, of course, guarantees, to ensure that there is clear defined investment strategies, the clear defined allocation mechanisms, which is a problem of many insurance products, let's be honest, earmarked assets for the PEPP, and clear monitoring by supervisors of these risk mitigation techniques. So all in all, I think that we've done collectively, together, a very good job. And now, of course, it's for the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council to, bring us to the last mile in order to make sure that consumers can demand this product and that the industry will deliver it.
So it is very encouraging to hear that you see PEPP really as the possibility that it can be an example of investment-based requirement provision that even functions in the middle of a financial. Little question going to Dragos. Do you think PEPP can not only be successful within a financial repression, but it also could make CMU and perhaps even the Green Deal a success? What do you think from inside the European Parliament?
I'm not only thinking, I'm working at it. So it's not that I'm just giving an opinion. I think that we have right now much united Parliament than before in terms of raising the budget. That we've actually intensively worked on the CMU, on the Capital Market Union. This is actually right now in the Parliament, in the middle of the debate, and we've discussed it in Econ, and we were going to advance this agenda. And I do believe clearly that PEPP is part of the Capital Market Union, and we need this ambitious vision for the CMU. I mean, everyone can talk about the optimum currency area and about, the Mondale thing and, the fact that we are, lagging behind with the banking union, capital market union, and many others. But right now, I think that we can use this current crisis, the sanitary that is transformed right now in an economic crisis, as an opportunity. And that's something that comes from Machiavelli onwards, and we should do it. But we need to walk the walk,
Yes.
not just talking about it. And I do believe that it's very essential to overcome the national sensitivities. And I'm referring obviously to the Council here, and to build the momentum to complete the CMU, to make the EU an attractive market for foreign capital, because this is also another important thing. We can actually get a lot of capital on that one. And I think that PEPP actually might exactly contribute to achieve this core objective, which is to improve the range of more attractive, on one hand, stable and sustainable, because that's actually important, pensions of options offered to citizens, and safeguarding economic stability on one hand, and minimizing financial risk, as Gabriel has actually already inferred. Related to the Green Deal, because you've hinted to that as well, I certainly don't believe that PEPP would be overruled. I just believe that PEPP would actually be able to support the development that will actually create in terms of digital solutions for cross-border pensions. We've seen what Jan has actually presented, and I think that if we create a market, a demand, then you have also a supply for that. And I think that the ECG taxonomy is actually desirable if we are actually moving forward as a continent, and we are projecting to our citizens that we are serious about climate neutrality and so on. And this is not just, again, I remember, the old times with the Lisbon agenda and the fact that Europe would be at the forefront of research and innovation at the global level, and then poof, nothing happened. Right now, I mean, we should learn some lessons. So if we are putting the money of the recovery plan together and we are building the ambition, then we should actually derive these objectives in the other things that we are working. And I think that PEPP savings could actually be invested in, taking into account ESG factors as those set in the Paris Agreement and the SDGs. You've heard Ursula von der Leyen, in her speech on the State of the Union, saying that 30% of the recovery plan should be, green bonds. I mean, I would say that we are moving in that direction. I mean, the fact that it's difficult. I mean, no one disputes that, and it's a challenge. But I do think that we have the Sustainable Finance Action Plan, which aims to attract as much private capital investment and achieve the SDG. I say that Christine Lagarde is there, and she's been quite clear on that one. The EIB has actually followed. So we are actually going in that direction, and PEPP should be part of this particular process, in my view.
Well, we have the first questions already coming from the audience, and I think we have the results of the poll already. And so I think we could move on to include the questions and the statements of the audience. Except Gabriel wants to add something to that what Dragos just said about Green Deal.
Very briefly,
and
if I may, because I think this is an important point, and I really think that, of course, the PEPP is a fundamental element in relation to all this combination of policies that we have right now in Europe, be it the CMU, be it the Green Deal, but also be it the element of digitalization. But let's be honest, I think the first and foremost important element is that the PEPP will contribute for better pension adequacy in the future for the European citizens. And that is incredibly important, because we need to have more social cohesion. We need to avoid old age poverty. We need to have the young generations trusting in Europe also for building, of course, pensions, a good pension. Important levers to deliver this objective. But they need to be there. And let's be honest, the demand, if the PEPP is a success, the demand for more equity-like instruments will be there. The issue is, can we as Europe have a capital markets union that delivers on that? Because otherwise, let's be honest, the investments will go to other parts of the world. The investments will go to the US market, which is a deep liquid and of course market on shares. That is very clear for me. So we need, I think we're pushing the demand side in here, which is fundamental, but then of course the markets need to deliver. And it goes without saying that this should be based on ESG compliant perspectives. I believe that there will be a lot of ESG PEPPs for sure. The investments of the PEPP will be there. Again, provided that the Green Deal delivers the supply of good green projects. And that is fundamental also. So I think that this is very important. And just one further point, which I think is at the center of all of this. We need to have both the industry and the European citizens, having less loss aversion. What created a lot of problems in the past was this loss aversion, that people looking at the short term. The PEPP can give this possibility to have a better management of loss aversion, because it's truly a long-term product. And that's why we have made a lot of simulations with more equity exposures, because that's the only thing that can give, of course, better returns in the future. So let's work together on that, and let's put the CMU and the Green Deal together with the PEPP.
So it seems that this optimism about PEPP is also found within the audience here. It's clear that the majority thinks that PEPP will encourage active savings for private retirement provision by citizens of the EU. 51% say yes, this is the case. 34% say no change, and only 14% say no. So this is quite encouraging. And if we look at who will be the industry to provide the people with PEPPs, the investment funds are the big winners, probably for nearly 50% of audience. Insurers for 40%, and banks are not really on the first point. But this all sounds quite optimistic, but I want that is a little bit more it's not so optimistic, and includes this current situation with COVID-19, with Corona. Margareta Starkevich I hope I spelled it right, asks, pandemic recovery fund shall inject a lot of money into the economy, so likely return on investments will go down, while prices on consumer products shall go down. So basic position of future, what is possible to avoid this scenario? What does the technical expert Bernardino says to this question, and what do you tell Dragos to decide?
Well, if I may, I think this clearly links to what I mentioned before, this issue of loss aversion, you know, and the way that the PEPP can deal, I think, with this loss aversion because of being an illiquid long-term product. Because of course, it's natural, and we will going to see it probably during many years. The low for long scenario, it's clear right now. I'm sure that during many years we will continue to have this type of interest rate policy, and of course, you know, if you look at then the yields of both government bonds and corporate, when investment which is only based on this, of course, it's very much impossible to give appropriate returns in the long term. So that's why the logic of the PEPP is really based on trying to have, of course, also according to the life cycle, which is a possibility, or the way that, of course, you can build it also from an insurance perspective, to build exposures that during a number of years will be more towards equity markets. And so that's the only way, to be honest, in the coming years, to build better returns in the future. Of course, this needs to be done within a framework where there's a mitigation of risks, and there's of course good investment policy and good supervision, by the way, because let's be honest also, we cannot, and on this I'm going to be sanguine, you know, we cannot ask, you know, generations of Europeans to invest in a product like the PEPP, where definitely there needs to be more investment in capital markets without having strong capital market supervision in Europe. This, I think, will not be serious enough. And it's a plea to the Parliament and to the Council and to the Commission that we need finally to take this seriously. And I think that these two things go hand in hand. You know, I know that there have been a lot of discussions at the beginning. The Parliament and the Commission were much more, I would say, ambitious in terms of European supervision. The Council didn't agree. That's what we have right now there. But I believe that for the PEPP, for example, you know, it's a European product, a European label. We should have European certification. We should have European supervision. And that's what would give, of course, citizens more trust and more confidence in something that will need to have investment policy, which will be, of course, having more risk. But I think we have tools, and a number of things were delivered right now by EIOPA. We have tools to have that mitigated in an appropriate way.
So Dragos, do you follow Bernardino, especially in the strong capital market supervision that he wants to be strengthened?
I mean, I'm wearing multiple hats today. So my political group, for instance, Renew Europe, is, you know, very keen on, you know, pushing forward with the European project. So if you ask me on that particular capacity, I'm going to be enthusiastic about what Gabriel has actually mentioned. And we do believe that we need to go further with the competencies at European level, and we are not going to deliver a fully fledged internal market without actually having the proper supervision and having more common powers, let's put it this way. So this is indeed a question related to how you interpret sovereignty or things like that right nowadays. It goes hand in hand with nationalism and populism. So I would say that this is still the political debate that has tormented us for the last decades. Right now, I suggested that we have a momentum, and that at least in the Parliament seems to be a consensus that we need to do more things at European level. Because I mean, honestly, if you look at what the citizens have actually experienced during the pandemics, I mean, with the lockdowns and, you know, each country doing its own and so on and so forth. And then the Commission has struggled with the green corridors, and we in the Parliament have actually struggled to suggest that we should have some sort of harmonization. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. We are not talking about the sanitary measures, we are talking about the financial measures, but it's the same logic actually. Yeah. And I wear also another hat. So thank you, Margareta, for the question on the recovery plan, because I'm actually the co-rapporteur on the RRF, on the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And as part of the Parliament team, indeed, we are going to, from a monetary perspective, it's true. If you are pouring the market with money, then it may seem that the financial returns will actually diminish or things like that. But then this, on the other hand, if you do a proper design and you go towards the market incentives and you use blended finance and you use the InvestEU instruments together with the RRF and not just pouring grants, you know, all over and powdering, you know, doing helicopter money, then it's different. And, you know, we are talking here about demographic challenges in Europe and perspectives that goes towards 2050. We are adding the Green Deal right now. So the whole point is, you know, building that future perspective and the trust for a longer term. So it's not only about the short term. On the next 4 years, we have more money. If we invested this money into, you know, smart things that are related to our future, I would say that, I mean, the returns would actually be on a longer period, on the medium run, quite favorable. So that's my view on it. That's why I'm optimistic about it. But of course, it will all boil down to what we are going to do in, you know, the very next years. You know, next year probably will be, I would say, quite crucial to see how we are going to fare on this particular one.
Well, but after all this optimism and after all this very, very nice view to the future of PEPP, I want to put a little bit water into the wine, taking another question from the audience. Stephanie Heise asks about, now it just put away, about why should an intermediary sell a PEPP product to consumers that earns him only a limited commission? I do not see how PEPP can be successfully sold, for example, here in Germany, as long as other pension products pay much more commissions. And perhaps I may add, this is really a big problem because the commissions are really extremely high, especially in Germany. But I have to admit that from the perspective of BDB. But this is a very, very important point. And I think Gabriel knows quite a lot about this issue and this problem with the conflict of interests. And how do you think we can avoid this problem and put PEPP to the European citizens to make it a success?
Well, I think there are two main, I would say, elements in here. One, it's from a regulatory perspective, and the second one from a supervisory perspective. So from a regulatory perspective, what was needed to do was, of course, first, you know, to have the basis for, you know, minimizing the costs and having transparency on those costs. And that, I think, it has been done with the cost cap. It has its own issues, as I mentioned, but I think that, you know, what we delivered brings a good basis to still have the possibility to develop sound business models and to deliver these products to the consumer. So by limiting the costs at that point. Secondly, I think that I'm a truly believer on digitalization. You know, I think that the intermediation of every product, also in the financial sector, is changing, and it's changing very rapidly. And I think that COVID-19 even you know, accelerates the pace of this change. I think the way that things will be sold, I think, will be completely different, and the possibility to bring costs down by using new technologies, I think it's also huge. And this doesn't mean that you do it only you know, by a robo-advisor or something like that. No, you can have mixed approaches where still, when you're advising a person in relation to different products, you have a, you know, a human contact there. But with all these new technologies that we have nowadays, this can be brought down, and we need these costs to be brought down, because otherwise, let's be honest, the products will never be good products. There's no value for money in a product in a situation of a low interest rate environment where the costs are 2-3%. That's not possible. So we need to bring that down, and I think from a regulatory perspective, we made the utmost out of it. Then the second part, it's supervision. And I think, and I've been, again, I think I've been very clear on this during the past, we need much stronger conduct of business supervision in Europe, be it on the, you know, on the market side, be it on the insurance side. And I think that we need to be very attentive from a supervisory perspective to the conflicts of interest that exist. You know, if you see an intermediary basically selling only products when you have huge commissions, when there are better products to the consumer, this needs to be challenged. That's why I think regulation evolved also on the with the product oversight and governance in the insurance side. But we need overall in Europe, I think, better supervision and more enforcement. I think that that is an important element going forward, and that I think needs to become more and more European also.
Well, yeah, Dragos, what do you say the representatives of the intermediaries coming to you and saying, oh, please make something, we want to sell the products and we want to gain really high commissions?
I mean, I will not refer to supervision because Gabriel has actually quite clarified that. I refer to the regulatory part. As a liberal, obviously, I'm not that happy with, you know, having minimum cost and so on. On the other hand, this is the difference in between regulating for today or regulating for the future. So that's actually the whole thing. It's about, I mean, if you stake the status quo, you will say, oh, I'm looking at the market, and then it has, you know, difficult chances to survive. That's why it's important to understand that there is no reassurance that PEPP would work without us, you know, all the stakeholders and the parts involved doing something about it. So let me just be very clear. If you want to have a European, pan-European product, this should not be, you know, doing the creaming on the market. That is taking only the, you know, savers say that to go and have and follow what we are calling the European way of life, right? That is an affordable product that would actually be used by the people that have most difficulties in actually ensuring their incomes. And I'm also a member of the EMPL committee, and we've been discussing about that. And I would say that this is actually, I would say this is will not catch, you know, the broad population. Then we might be concerned about the demand for it. But if we are not actually going to make it attractive for a wider demand, then it will not happen. So it's actually very important to understand that. And last words on the digital. This is actually crucial for the Parliament as well. So we've been talking about the Green Deal, and we want to be very clear that we see the Green Deal and the digital transformation at par. This is not the fact that the Green Deal is more important than the digital transformation. And this was actually underlined by Ursula von der Leyen as well. And this is one of the key things that we in Europe through Margrethe Vestager are actually pushing very, very, very fast. Now, this includes, you know, the use of new technologies. And Gabriel has inferred to the digital, you know, I'm talking directly about, for instance, AI, the artificial intelligence. And we've seen Jan, you know, at the introduction with the platform and these kind of things. And these are meant, I mean, the digital transformation is meant not to scare people, not to, you know, replace jobs, but actually to create opportunities and to, you know, in this particular case, create a better product in terms of cost to the population. And last but not least, I'm a very, you know, big fan of evidence-based policy. That is, we regulate and then we evaluate. And then if there are things that, you know, based on the evidence on the market, we see that we don't have entrepreneurs that go digital and come up with a way to provide the products, then again, we will ask ourselves why. But then it's very important to understand that we are not going to regulate only for the existing actors on the market. We will regulate also allowing entrepreneurship and allowing people that will go digital, and then it will be a challenge. And some of the actors of today will be challenged, and we like that. I'm a fan of your creative distraction and of Schumpeter. And again, beware, you know, the big houses that are, you know, considered that they are actually owning the national financial markets. I mean, beware, yeah. And the suggestion is not to oppose doing that and lobby your politicians to oppose in the council. The suggestion is to go with the digital wave, to transform and become more competitive yourself, and then you can get even more. So one thing is to look at the pie and say, I fear that my pie would be actually halved by, you know, other actors. And the other thing is to say, I have access to the whole European pie, and then I might not get the same share that I have at the national level, but I will have a share at the European level. And that's actually great. And anyway, I can actually go on and on that, but I think that the idea is.
But respecting the competitiveness I just want to add one little question and ask you to ask shortly, because then we have probably we will have insurance industry and investment industry and probably some banks trying to take a part in the PEPP market. How do you think we can diminish the differences between those three different regulations that we have? I mean, how can we find a level playing field at least for PEPP products? And Gabriel, you have your problems, or perhaps also your friendship experiences with the others authorities. But how can we manage that there is a level playing field that is fair for all providers?
Well, let's be honest. What we have right now in relation of the PEPP is, one PEPP regulation, and there will be, of course, also the delegated acts and the technical the board. They apply to all banking products. Now, of course, there's a second layer of rules, which are the rules from each one of the sectors, and that's where, of course, the differences would come. What I would prefer, to be very honest, in an ideal world, would be to have one single set of rules at all levels to be applied to this type of products. And for example, the MiFID and IDD much closer in order to avoid to have opportunities of arbitrage also between the products, which sometimes are very close. Of course, there are differences, but if the products, have the same objective, like in here, which is the same objective as the PEPP, they should be subject to the same level of rule. We have achieved, I think, a lot right now, but we will need, as Dragos mentioned, I think we will need to, of course, evaluate in real life how does this work, and then to build on that. So I think it's a first step, but it goes in the right direction.
Okay. Well, Dragos, you have the last word for this round right now, and I think you can point out how you think about a level playing field and how you, especially as a liberal, want to gain that.
Yeah. So again, the challenge that we have in front of us, it's a difficult one. I have been trying to come up with an optimistic attitude because I'm optimistic about the future of Europe, and I believe that if we are optimistic about the future of Europe, then we can work out, a saving instrument for the third pillar that would work for our citizens. And so, on the other hand, again, there are constraints. We are not talking here about things that we've discovered yesterday. We've been trying for years to, come up with solutions. Gabriel has mentioned that he started, more than 7 or 8 years ago with that. And again, if we are looking at the reforms that have shaped Europe of today, like adopting euro or internal market, if you would actually put that forward right now with the leadership that we have right now in Europe, this haven't actually been, assured. So you need to take some sort of a leap of faith and believe that maybe we will discover this renewed leadership in Europe. From the Parliament side, what is important is not to lose the main objective. The main objective is to provide the citizens of Europe a way to, be sure that they have this adequacy when they are retiring and they will live a decent life. The European way of life means a life where you can actually afford to do things and then have active aging and so on and so forth. So that's actually something which is very, very important. That's why this is not just for the purpose of creating a product or interfering with the financial market. The whole purpose is to help. And we in the Parliament, that's the purpose actually of the Delegated Act. It's actually, we are going to try to work with the Commission, and when they are coming with the evidence and the reports on how things are, to try to more or less get our own feeling from our constituencies and try to improve that if the citizens will or the stakeholders are reacting to it. So that's actually the bottom line. That's how I see it, a citizens-oriented PEPP, obviously with a view that the stakeholders and the one that they're going to implement, need to have a say and need to be respected and represented well. So we are not talking about only representing citizens and savers, members, but also representing financial institutions. Not a liberal, and if you play by these rules, then the results will be good. So thank you very much for that. It was actually an honor and a pleasure, and I feel that this would be just the start of a longer dialogue in the months that are coming.
Well, that's why I want to ask the very last question. You have to end the beginning of a sentence I give you, and yes, the sentence starts with, in 10 years, we think of PEPP as
a
Gabriel?
the pension product for European citizens.
Dragos?
I have a broader view here, a breakthrough in actually getting a more European dimension into the pension market overall Europe.
That's very nice.
I believe that we are going to have some other instruments coming. So I think that in 10 years, I hope that in 10 years, we are going to have much more pan-European financial activity than we have today. So
we shall see. We shall see about that, and we will discuss technical details after the coffee break. I tell you, the poll is open again, so we can see what will happen if more of the participants give their meaning to the poll. And yeah, I'm invited to do that. I invite you to a of coffee, unfortunately not you, meanwhile the coffee break, and we come back together in 12 minutes to go on with the public with the panel discussion about some technical interesting things about PEPP. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hi, so we will soon start again. It is 2:29. I would like to briefly announce first that the poll is indeed open again, so you can all vote again. If you have voted already before, please feel free to either change your answer or vote again. We will now start the panel discussion moderated by Christian Gulic from BDV. And the four panelists are Bernard Delbecq from EFAMA, Olaf Jones from Insurance Europe, Klein van Tik, and Hans van Meerten from University of Utrecht. I give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Arnaud. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our conference on PEPP from my side as well. The second part of our conference will consist in a virtual panel discussion with prominent experts on panels, mostly from EIOPA's OPSG as well, like me. We will try to get a closer look on the PEPP Level 2 regulation with special regard to product innovation, distribution channels, capital guarantees, and information requirements. Before I introduce our panelists, I would like to add just one point from the perspective of the retail savers, why we have chosen the issue of financial repression as heading for our discussion on PEPP. As Guillaume has already pointed out, financial repression is a special kind of interdependence of monetary and financial policies and of supervisory regulations. Therefore, retail savers are trapped in a misfortunate alternative. Either they choose low interest rate products or they choose products with less or no guarantees. In consequence, they have either high opportunity costs, this means profits they could not accumulate, or they are fully confronted with the increasing danger, not just of higher volatility, but of growing asset price bubbles. Since this year and its economic consequences of the corona pandemic, there is even a third emerging danger: a possible stronger inflation of consumer goods. Of course, this is not sure. Right now, all price indicators show into the opposite direction, but nevertheless, one plausible development in the long run. Increasing exposure to possible asset price bubbles, and at the same time, the increasing probable loss of purchasing power may even be a very negative consequence of financial repression for long-term retail savers. For our risk mitigation techniques included in the PEPP regulation strong enough to protect retail savers against the growing uncertainties of the financial markets. Gabriel Bernardino already stated that all stakeholders must overcome loss aversion. And in my opinion, this is already a fundamental answer to this question. I hope that we will be able to include these aspects in our discussion. Now, I would like to introduce to you our panelists. I start with Bernard Debec. He's a senior director of the European Fund Asset Management Association in Brussels and currently chair of EIOPA's OPSG. Prior to joining EFAMA, Bernard was a policy advisor to the Belgian Minister of Finance, and previously he worked as an economist at the International Monetary Fund in Washington. Welcome, Bernard.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce to you Olaf Jones. He's Deputy Director General of Insurance Europe, the European Insurance and Reinsurance Federation in Brussels, and member of EIOPA's OPG as well. He's also a member of the Advisory Council of IFRS, the International Financial Reporting Standards, and he spent 15 years in the insurance industry in roles relating to risk and capital management. Welcome, Olaf. Our third is the chair of European Pension Law at the University of Utrecht. Hans, you are a member of EIOPA's OPSG as well. Last year, you published a book on European pension law, and only recently you were granted a research work on consumer protection in pensions from the Dutch Institute GAC. Welcome, Hans.
Thank you.
Last but not least, there is Till Klein. He is founder and CEO of the fintech Vantik in Berlin. In order to underline your will to offer the new European pension product, you were even member of EIOPA's expert panel on PEPP. Welcome, Till.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
Yeah, okay, so thank you to you all for being with us today. As already mentioned, we will now look more precisely to the PEPP Level 2 regulations with regard to product innovation, distribution channels, capital guarantees, and, if possible, information requirements. Therefore, first question to the four panelists I would like to ask is the following. Which are, from your special perspective, the three main topics which will lead PEPP either to a success or to a failure? Will PEPP foster product innovation? Yeah, so maybe Bernard, you should start.
Okay, so thank you, Christian. And first of all, let me congratulate BVD and Better Finance for organizing this event at this very crucial time, for the PEPP. Yeah, I'd like just to confirm that, we're deeply committed to the success of the PEPP, and we're quite encouraged by the optimism of the audience revealed by the survey and the question posed, the result of this survey. And I would also agree with Gabriel Bernardino that we have a very good basis for a successful PEPP. However, unfortunately, I feel, and you're asking us about what could lead to the success or the failure of the PEPP. Unfortunately, we strongly believe that the FICAP, as already discussed by Gabriel, and as defined in the proposed level 2 measures, will prevent the PEPP actually from being successful, at least in the short term. But if you agree, I'll just explain this position later when we discuss about the FICAP. So in the short term now, let me just emphasize two additional points that are very important for the success of the PEPP. We know that tax incentives are crucial to encourage people to save for retirement. So to be successful, the PEPP will need to benefit from the same tax relief as those, as the one that are provided to existing personal pension products. If not, people will not be interested in saving the PEPP, and distributors will not make any effort to offer the PEPP. And this is now to member states to decide about this, and associations like BVD and national association will need to be very active at the European level, the national level, just to engage with the national authorities to convince them to provide this tax incentive. The second point I'd like to highlight is that an important feature of the PEPP, maybe this was not emphasized yet too much, is its portability across borders. This is very good news, especially for mobile citizens, but it is also a service that PEPP providers will have to deliver. And given the considerable differences between the taxation system of pensions products across Europe, it would be great, it is almost essential that member states would agree to adopt what I would call an harmonized taxation system for the PEPP. This would reduce the cost of offering the portability, which is mandatory on the part of PEPP providers. And of course, this would reduce the cost of saving in a PEPP. And just let me remind you that this was a recommendation of the European Parliament, these two issues regarding the tax. So we hope that these will not remain a dead recommendation. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Bernard. Very good that you gave us already a task to deliver on the national level, and I'm back, of course, to the point of the fee cap. Now, please, Olaf, just continue. What are your answers to these three questions,
Thank you, and thanks very much for the invitation and chance to speak about indeed a very timely and very interesting subject. I think that first of all, I will tackle maybe whether the PEPP will stimulate innovation. I think the answer is yes. I think it's already stimulated a lot of discussion about distribution model, pricing, robo-advice, some of the things we'll talk about a bit later. And I think it's really put a push behind thinking about how those could help going forward. Certainly, I think it's stimulated discussions about online distribution and good ideas in terms of how to present complex information in a simple way. And we'll talk about that a bit later. So that it's had some definite positive effects. And there was also significant interest in the concept from the industry, of the insurance industry, because first of all, we have been raising the point that there is a pension gap problem in Europe, and this will just grow. There's an aging problem, and there's a fundamental need for people to save more. And so anything, including the PEPP, that helps address that is very much appreciated and encouraged. And of course, also through that can generate a flow of funds, which are long-term funds, which can indeed help with funding the transformation we need to a sustainable economy. So there's a lot of very good things that are behind the purpose and thinking about PEPP that we very much support. From a business model point of view, the idea of having being able to have a single manufacturing base for a product which can work across Europe, multiple markets, with a similar features and similar regulatory framework has obvious some benefits in terms of cost and efficiency. So all of those things are very positive elements of the PEPP that created some interest. However, I think there are also some challenges for this to be a success. And I think I'll echo some of the comments made by Bernard in that respect. But I think, first of all, in terms of what are the if I can think of three scenarios that can lead to a potential failure of a PEPP or its success. The first is that, of course, you do need providers to sell it. It was mentioned earlier that it needs to be attractive to providers. And at the moment, one of the biggest issues there has already been raised. It's around the price cap. And we'll talk a bit more in detail about it later, so I won't go into detail, but that is a potential problem, a big problem for providers to overcome at the moment. The second reason why it may or may not be a success is about whether anyone wants to buy it. And that is fundamentally linked to this issue of tax incentives. If it doesn't get the same tax incentive as local other options, then it obviously will not be attractive. Also, of course, getting someone to buy something new is not always easy if there's other alternatives which are similar or considered as good. So there are some questions about whether people will buy it, although in principle it could be attractive. And then I think this is at the launch, whether it's successful or not. I think there's also a question of when we look back after a number of years, will it be considered a success? And I think one of the factors there is whether people feel it's delivered on its promises. And one of the key promises of a basic PEPP is that it provides capital protection. And I think that we may see turbulent markets ahead. And if people lose money when they were expecting to be protected, then I think that could be viewed as a failure, because they may be disappointed, and it may put them off savings and put them off other European initiatives if it doesn't deliver on its promises. So the risk protection element will be key, and I think we'll talk about that later too.
Yes, thank you, Bernard. Sorry, thank you, Olaf. I think it's effectively that is a very important point. The last point yet you have, Johnson, mentioned the awareness and the protection against risks. But I think for this here, the inclusion of risk mitigation techniques already in the regulation itself is one of the product innovations that PEPP has put forwards. But okay, thank you. In fact, your statement is much more positive than I thought from the insurance industry. And please, yeah, just maybe just go on with Hans van Merken. You are our judicial expert, and please, what do you think? What are your strong points?
Yes, thank you very much, Christian, and also Better Finance, of course, for the invitation. I'm very happy to add a few words to this. First of all, I'm a strong believer in PEPP, as you might know. I think PEPP is really the solution which we all are waiting for in Europe. A simple product which is easily consumed, hopefully by the consumer, digital, robot advice. So innovation-wise, yes, you know, if properly structured, the PEPP can really add a growing need, and already the pension gap was mentioned. I think it might really add to the existing second pillar, maybe products that are around. If a person who is mobile across member states can easily conclude a PEPP, I think it's really an added value and also an answer to many problems with pensions we face in Europe. Not in the last place, of course, the pension gap and the aging problem. So again, I'm very positive, and I think in the PEPP regulation itself, there's a lot of things which are really state of the art, like communication. It really sets an example, I think, for pension providers, not only third pillar, but also second pillar, so occupational pension wise, in a way they should interact and communicate with the consumer, basically, because I see pension products as a financial product, and as a product basically that needs to be consumed. So people need to understand what it is because they are paying money for it. So the warning is, of course, let's make sure that it not gets too complicated, also by formulating the delegated acts in a way which the local supervisors can then, of course, give their own twist to it. We should prevent that as much as possible. Yeah, so I'm a big fan also of precisely formulating the level 2 measures, which in my view, of course, I'm not all positive. I'm still a lawyer, of course. But I think one of the things that are basically a bit missing in the level 2 measures, we'll get back to that later, is the definition, the lack of definition, I would say, of guarantees. Because that gives all kinds of interpretation problems. Okay, what do we exactly mean with guarantees? Do they fall under the cap, or do they don't fall under the cap? And which kind of guarantees do we actually mean? So I think the level 2, we should warn, or we should be careful that the level 2 is A, understandable and very much good, carefully drafted, but B, also that there is a few definitions added to it. And I think if this is done, and if it's clearer than is already the case, then the PEPP can really be a success throughout Europe. Thank you. We'll get back to some points later.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the last point you have mentioned is very, very important. We will come back at the third question that I have prepared. But now, please, Till, what are your 3 main points? You have started as a provider, or at least distributor, and then what do you think? What are the chances, for example, especially in a country like Germany, which has very well developed market for third pillar, let's say strong development for third pillar.
Well developed, but the question is this, if there is need for improvement.
Yeah, sorry, well, only in a quantitative sense. You are completely right.
A lot has been already said from a previous panelist, so I completely agree to. Let me add a few things. One is, I definitely see it as a huge opportunity for innovation. First, in terms of digital distribution. So, because of course, as has been said before, it is necessary to involve digital technology to do proper distribution and to fulfill the higher bars at lower cost. So this will definitely foster innovation. Secondly, also in terms of risk mitigation techniques. So we've seen, particularly if I look from the German market, the guarantees from an economic perspective for customers, they have been a catastrophe. Yeah, so very expensive and very, very high opportunity cost in terms of low return. So I think there's huge room for innovation in terms of new risk mitigation techniques. And I think that PEPP is definitely a big opportunity here. In terms of what could push it and what could be potential barriers, I see who could push it is probably new entrants to the markets or change the market. So currently in most countries, this market is dominated by the insurance industry. It kind of opens it up not only for fintechs like us, but also for banks and as we've seen before, the asset managers. So that could give the market quite a big push because they might be very interested to push in. And as well, of course, like fintechs as us. What I see as potential barriers is when I see the discussion and the lot of enthusiasm here in this group, I completely share. If I talk to politicians in Germany, there's nothing. Yeah, there's very little awareness, and they are not even. It's not a big topic for them. Although, as has been said before, I think Bernard, but also the others have mentioned it, they have the key or one of the keys in their hand, which is the taxation. Of course, if there's a big disadvantage of the PEPP product towards a traditional or other alternatives, then it will be quite difficult, even although I think there's still a lot to do on a local level because local politicians do have at least one key in their hand.
Thank you very much, Till. I think just the last point you have mentioned is really very, very important with regard to the barriers, that there must be a general awareness of this new product, that there is a new possibility to give a push to private retirement provision, not just the solutions we already know. We have a strong discussion on that in Germany, but I think in France or other countries there are already, for example, kind of state-subsidized private pension products. And of course, PEPP has to be found, to find its place among all these products. So, but you have mentioned as well the possibility of new players on the market, starting with PEPP. So this is a very good. Also, I can hand over or go to the next question on the distribution channels. The question is, following to EIOPA's draft RTS, not only administrative, investment and marketing costs, but the cost of initial advice will be included in the 1% cost cap of the basic PEPP. So the question is, will this all-inclusive approach trigger a change of distribution remuneration systems? For example, less entry fees and more regular payments? And could it lead to, as we have already discussed a little bit, could it lead to more online distribution procedures with layered information which are already enforced by the current pandemic? Maybe just still, you explain a little bit more what you just had started.
Yeah, I definitely see there will be some pressure for online distribution and kind of piggyback on a trend, which from my perspective is good. Either it happens via fintechs or even also the incumbents. So I hope that we will see a push forward for innovation for online distribution. There's another side effect from my perspective, which is indirectly related to the gap. We are all talking about the standard PEPP, but there's other PEPPs as well. And there's lots of opportunity. And I think that's quite often does not get enough attention because of course you can charge more if you provide more value. For me, the basic PEPP is a very good default option and I really like the idea. On the other hand, it will be a benchmark for all additional products. And if you as a provider provide another PEPP product, you need to show that it has additional value, and this additional value has a price. And once you can show that to customers, they are probably also willing to pay that. And everything you provide to customers needs to benchmark against this reference point, which is very transparent. And this is why I have high expectations in terms of impact on future distribution.
Thank you very much. Now I'm very curious what the representative of the insurance industry might say to what Till has said. Please, Olaf, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think this is where, you know, I did mention some of the reasons for successful failure without necessarily judging what the outcome would be. But I think if we focus on the distribution, I think we have to talk about the 1% cap again. And I think this is unfortunately a reason why it may not succeed in terms of attracting suppliers. Because some people think the 1% cap is just a case of, well, if we don't have so much commission, you'll solve the problem. But I think what tend to be forgotten is within the 1% cap, we have to provide full advice, and that is full advice, including covering all aspects of the customer's other sources of income, their tax situation, other pension options, their option of a company, state pension, all these things, which is not possible to do robotically to each and every European market. So I think that the cheapest advice that we are aware of that can manage that sort of level of advice is upwards of at least 150 euros, more like probably 200 plus, because it's based on a human expert and takes some time, probably at least an hour or more. So if you compare that to what a PEPP can charge 1% per year, and if the average PEPP is 1,000 euros, that's 10 euros in 1 year, even allowing for accumulation over 5 years, you can't even pay back the advice, let alone all the other costs. And this is a product that has to have compartments, has to have advice at 3 stages of the product life, and obviously requires a lot of systems, setup, training, and all sorts of other things. So this is one reason why we highlight this price cap and the advice requirement as combining into a bit of a problem. Now, and one reason why there's some concern about how can you do robo-advice, how can we do digital distribution, and this is happening anyway. COVID-19 situation has shown the value of having being digitalized. The insurance industry has managed to cope very well operationally, and that's partly because they are already very digitalized. And so this is not something caused by PEPP, but PEPP has accelerated some of the discussion. And I think that will continue. A few things just on the digitalization that we have to bear in mind, and that is that beyond the ability question of whether people are yet, it's probably one of the biggest financial decisions they will make online, without face-to-face involvement. that's a behavioral thing that we think may still be a barrier at the moment. And in some cases, there are some legal constraints still. I mean, COVID showed that not every country allows digitalized. Still some barriers to full digitalization, not all of which are to do with the companies or the technology, but certainly some of them are as well. So I think that I do agree that PEPP is part of a process to sort of push towards digitalization. That will continue with and without the PEPP. But clearly, if the PEPP is going to be offered at all, it has to be very low cost distribution, very digital.
Thank you very much, Olaf. I just would like to make the remark that there are already products or companies, insurers especially, who try to sell pension products already now, just only in a purely online way. So for this, the PEPP is not a completely new product, but I think it enforces, it enhances it. Yeah, now Bernard, does the investment industry have of the costs?
So, I mean, it does not happen, always. It happens sometimes, but I fully agree with my colleague Olaf. I mean, I could have just fully sign his statement. I mean, the problem is that we have this 1% fee cap, and there is, as Olaf said, there is this just full advice. It's MiFID type suitability test that needs to be made, and the text in Article 4 of the regulation is pretty precise. And we must say that EIOPA and Gabriel in particular was not in favor of requesting these full advice. They advised the Commission and the co-legislator not to go in that direction, but unfortunately, these two. And the need to provide the field advice, I mean, what we get from the industry is that the 1% fee cap, including the initial cost of advice, is not economically viable, unfortunately. So there is kind of a deadlock. I mean, that's the position, what we are hearing from our members. And what can we do? I mean, regarding the advice, we want to reduce advice. EIOPA took position in its assessment that doing that would be, and I quote, a regulatory circumvention. So they believe that the text there is quite tough regarding advice. And EIOPA, in its statement, in its assessment, also believe that there is limitation to the way you can automate or semi-automate the distribution process and the advice process, in particular because we are talking about a personalized recommendation. So it's not execution only, it's not like the PEPP, it's safe, it's cost efficient, I want to save in it. No, you need to have this conversation, and there is a responsibility and compliance on the part of the distributor's advisor that he has just complied with this administrative work. So what can we do? I mean, we believe that at this stage, we can still avoid this bad outcome if we could convince the European Commission and the European Parliament, and I would hope that Dragos there, would just would be convinced that there is a need to do something to exclude, and this is a proposal to exclude the cost of initial advice at least until the first review of the PEPP, and the fee cap. That's just a proposal. Let's allow the PEPP to take off.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it was a clear statement. I think Gabriel has already mentioned the possibility of amortization of the cost of advice in the long run of the PEPP, and I think this is a very important point he has made. And okay, we will go on now. Hans, I think I remember one of our discussions that we had in the OPSG. You spoke of judicial certainty for the consumers, that the 1% cost gap must be judicious.
Well, yes and no, I always say.
Yes.
First of all,
that makes the judicial experts.
Yes. Hey, first of all, the short word, because I also look at the time a little bit, a few times. And I think that's the least we should worry about, because if you look at the judgments and the ECJ court case law, you basically can conclude already that there should be no discrimination for PEPs against national products, and that they should get the same treatment. So that is not something I worry about. I do company or it, so panels so who said, yeah, this 1% is even too high. We can do it much lower than 1%, you know. And I don't know, of course, the details, you know, of the American 401k products, but at least that's what they told me. They said, okay, that's already too high, 1%. We can do it much lower. And I really like the idea of Till, what he mentioned before, of the basically attitude saying, okay, this should be a reference point. Let 1% be a reference point. And leave it up to the market, yes or no, whether we can fulfill this 1%. I think that's much really on that 1% done. You know, who gets it done to offer this product really at this reference point of 1% close and buy.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, thank you. I think that is I think that's a very good point, and we know that I think the supervisory authorities, either on the level or the European, are already ready to listen if one really comes with strong arguments to them, and then they will maybe maybe have a more subtle view on some points of the regulation. And I would just in order to give a short answer here to this question of the distribution cost, I would just like to mention that. We have examples that for the launch of a new product, especially insurers have made capital funding. Have made capital funding in order just to launch it. And I just think here about on the, for example, variable annuities 10 years ago, there were really strong examples that in order just to make the launch, additional capital had been given. Now, the third question is now on capital guarantees. Following to the investment rules of the PEPP regulation, the assets shall be invested in such a manner as to ensure the security, quality, liquidity, and profitability of the portfolio as a whole. Given these investment rules, given the fact that guarantee costs are not part of the cost cap of the basic PEPP, and having additionally in mind the ongoing low interest rate phase and its pressure on costs and returns, why should PEPP savers choose a product with guarantees? Do guarantees still make sense either for the accumulation phase or for the decumulation phase? Maybe, Olaf, we had a short discussion about that question already before. You may just start, please.
Yes. Well, first of all, I would say yes, guarantees do and can make sense. I think that someone raised, I saw one of the questions too, about define a nature guarantee. I mean, a guarantee is very simple. You get your money, you get your investment back minus the taxes and costs. I know that some people may want other types of guarantees as the standard within the PEPP, including inflation, etc. There's good reasons why that is very, very difficult to include in a guarantee, because you can't hedge it, for example, can't manage it. But the guarantee that's offered is very easy to understand. And I think, and it's a hard guarantee. It's not a guarantee based on a probability distribution that the customer has to both trust in and understand. So I think that's why the guarantee should be there, and people still want guarantees and they value that safety. In fact, we did a survey of 10,000 pension savers across Europe, and asked them what they liked about a product, what they wanted from a product. And 70% of them, over 70% of them, said they would choose safety over performance. So obviously they have to see that the costs of the guarantee, which will be fully transparent, and they'll have to see the impact on the performance, which will also be fully transparent. But people do want to have that choice, and it's right for them to have it. Now, one of the reasons why a guarantee can work is because we often hear that people should avoid sort of risk aversion. I don't think we should be avoiding risk aversion. We should be avoiding irrational risk aversion. And unfortunately, there is risk in the markets. And where people say the markets do well, what they mean is on average, over a long period of time, the markets do well. And so if you invest in equities and other assets that have risk, they do well on average and over a period of time. Now, what insurance companies have traditionally done, like with all their products, including non-life motor products, they pool lots of people together and they convert individual experiences into average experiences, and that average experience becomes predictable and better value for each individual. And that's exactly what we tend to do with savings and pensions products. We pool people together, we give them the average outcome, and we can add on a guarantee in that as well. And that product can work very well.
Okay, sorry, but now I think I see the time. Bernard, it's up to you now. Does the investment industry have a different point of view because you have different risk mitigation techniques?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a good question, good debate. I mean, what is interesting is that you remember that the European Commission just wanted that the basic PEPP would only offer a guarantee. Well, that's the co-legislator there agreed that it should not be the case. So the Commission proposal was amended precisely as Olaf said, just to give a choice to the savers. So there was something that we very much welcome, and the saver and the basic PEPP could choose between a guarantee or a life cycling strategy. Life cycling strategy was discussed by Dragos, was discussed by Gabriel. I mean, we really believe that those strategies are consistent with the CMU. They allow savers, especially those that have a long-term horizon, to invest in long-term assets and to reduce the risk over time when they are getting closer to retirement, just to deal with the risk that Olaf mentioned. On the other hand, unfortunately but to provide a guarantee, the insurers, they have to invest in these sovereign bonds that Guillaume alluded to, offering ultra low or negative interest rate, and no protection against inflation. And this is a real issue. And I also think that people don't understand the problem of erosion of caused by inflation. So we believe that nominal guaranteed products are unsuitable for the vast majority of long-term investors. It will be up to the distributors, advisors, just to explain that. And the kit also to provide and convey this information. They will have the choice. We believe that, for most people, especially the use of today and tomorrow, is not the best investment product or savings product for pension.
Thank you, Bernard. I think that was clear. Till, what is your perspective from a product provider who may, from a distributor who may offer as well insurances as in investment products?
The interesting point is we are not talking about a guarantee and no guarantee. Or no risk mitigation. Yes. The beauty of it that we are talking about a risk level and different instruments, and we open up for new alternatives. I completely agree with what you said, Olaf. I even have higher numbers for the German market that people are very risk aware. But do they need a guarantee, which is 100%, or do they need a 99 point something, which is much cheaper and much more suitable? And that's the key point. And I think that's one of the big innovations of PEPP, to allow for alternative techniques. That could be life cycling, yes, exactly. But that could be also other stuff, as for example, we do it. And I think that is super, super important. And interestingly, to add from a customer perspective, we did a survey and asked what level of risk or security. And we offered them 100% versus 99%. And interestingly, they choose the 99%. Because they say in those times, 100% is very unlikely. But 99 sounds even good or even a little bit lower. Yeah. The problem is that we know what a guarantee means, that it is a legal term versus an alternative. For a customer, they have no clue. And when you ask them, do you want a guarantee or no guarantee or whatever, it is very difficult to understand the difference. And I think it's a big communication problem to make clear that is risk mitigation techniques which are not necessarily a hard 100% guarantee.
Thank you very much. I think that was just the point to hand over to to Hans. Do you think that guarantee is, as it was said, just a judicial kern, and does the PEPP regulation, is it sufficient in this case, or do we have more an economic view on that? Please, Hans.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that sort of brings me back to my first point, that there is no clear definition of what guarantees are. If we look at the classical Solvency II-like guarantee, with the security mechanism of 99.5%, I believe that is not working anymore in the new world. Offering a product which has a security mechanism standard of 99.5% will become too expensive for the PEPP. You can have an insurance payout phase, of course. You can have insurance companies attached to that. But I think also insurance companies should find new ways of innovating and offering new kinds of guarantees. That means we have to leave, in a way, the classical definition of what guarantees are. You can also simulate guarantees, or by risk sharing. There are all kinds of ways out there, by not offering guarantees in the classical way anymore, and maybe even with a lower guarantee or a lower security standard. Like, for example, pension funds in the Netherlands, they have a security mechanism of 79.5, which is much lower, of course, than Solvency II insurers. But even that 79.5% cannot be met, by the way. So I think in the new world, we should think about ways of more like even tontine-like structures, of sharing the risk within a pool. And I know that's not very popular in some areas, but I think it's the way we should model a PEPP product in the end. So the classical definitions of guarantees, I don't longer see a future for them. Sorry.
Can I just add one thing there? Because I think that behind insurance products, there is a pooling of risk. Behind almost every insurance product is ultimately a pooling system of the longevity, mortality, and other risks, as well as the investment risk. So that's one thing. But I think that just two quick points. One is that insurers are also interested in offering these other products, life cycling and pooling and smoothing that the PEPP offers. So it's a range of products we think should be available. On the guarantee, one of the big issues is Solvency II, because Solvency II, we're not arguing with the 1 in 200, but we do think that the 1 in 200 is not being correctly applied to us, because it doesn't fully take into account our long-term nature and the interaction between assets and liabilities in the right way. If we fix Solvency II in the way that we are proposing for the Solvency II review, I think you will see guaranteed products which will be able to take more investment risk for long-term products like pensions, and therefore be able to offer a better balance between safety and return.
Thank you very much, Olaf. I think that is a very good point. But again, it is already very technical. I think we are already rather far in the time, and I think we should now open the floor to the questions. I see here one question from Andre Angithoglu, sorry, pronunciation. The question is, will we be sufficiently transparent about the impact of costs and charges and inflation, and on what the guarantee means to the consumer in real terms? This is a bear trap we must not fall into. I'm worried we are walking straight into it. Maybe Till, you would start to answer this question.
I'm not sure if I fully understood the question.
Just the question. No, the question is the cost of the guarantees, or opportunity costs of guarantee. Can they be shown in real terms?
The opportunity cost, yeah, of course they can. That's pretty clear, and that's exactly as Olaf, as you mentioned. So there's an opportunity cost. You can put a number behind it, I think the interesting point is really kind of have a high level of security, and nobody doubts that. That's the key point here. That this is necessary, and that's also what consumers want, and rightly so. But the question is, what are we talking about, and what is the right level? And I think it's quite interesting to have alternatives, and that allow currently. The guarantees are the reason why people have less pension, and that is shit. Or This is the biggest problem at the end. What we all should strive for, that people get the most out of the pension or for what they pay in. And there is cost and there is investment. And if that holds back a proper investment, then it is not good, of course, combined with the security. But from my perspective, it is a good development to open that up and for alternatives.
Okay. Bernard, would you like to add something?
Yeah, quickly. I mean, I understand with Till that, of course, there is this opportunity cost. I mean, now, as Hans said, I mean, all these would need to be properly defined. I mean, you know, if the opportunity cost is the loss of return compared to another strategy, okay, you know, I think that these can be shown in the PEPP. But there is also the cost of producing the guarantee. And this is something that is not defined in the level 2. And this is very unfortunate because it has been excluded from the fee cap. It will be shown in the kit, but it's excluded. And, you know, there is no proposal to agree on a common methodology to calculate and define and calculate this cost of guarantee. This is being left to national authorities on the basis of evidence that insurers will show them. You know, and I can bet that at the national level, there will be different views on whether this evidence is convincing. So we're disappointed about this aspect of the level 2. And we hope that, you know, one day the European Commission will ask EIOPA to develop a common methodology to calculate the cost of providing a guarantee, which is different from the opportunity cost of having a guarantee in its product.
Christian, can I just make some comments there? Because I think that, first of all, the impact of any cost of guarantee to the customer and their returns will be completely transparent under the PEPP and to the customer. On that, there is no issue. The customer will see the impact very clearly. Secondly, which I think is the question asked, will the customer see the impact post-inflation? And the answer is yes, because under the PEPP requirements, you're going to have to report the performance after adjusting for inflation. So you'll see the real impact. Now, we think that that may also could confuse people a bit. So we think that the sort of without inflation should be one of the figures shown too. But in the end, the decision was to show after inflation. So I think in response to the actual question, they will see the combined impact of all the costs, including any guarantee after inflation. That's what will be presented to them in the PEPP.
Thank you very much. I think we have now already reached our... Axel, do you want? We have not, the final question was that I had prepared was a question on information requirements. So do you think that, for example, the disclosure of on the one hand of the total amount of the contributions on, for example, the projected monthly retirement benefits, are these disclosures sufficient enough to give this security to the possible customers of the PEPP? Maybe Hans, you could start. So we touch a little bit to the point of the benefit pension statement.
Yeah, to keep it short and also to save time, this is not my expertise, of course. So I'm not a communication expert. We are trying now to develop also, as I said, you know, as you said in the beginning in my introduction, at the University of Utrecht, a sort of framework where consumers can be protected more against pension products, and that doesn't lie is our first finding into information, what information details. Now it's more about, you know, does the consumer really understand? It doesn't really matter how technical you get, you know, or how much prescriptions you must subscribe to a person. He doesn't read it anyway. So I don't think it lies in the communication requirements as such. It lies more in the fact that, okay, can you fulfill what you promised? Point. And if you didn't promise anything, what did you promise? So it lies more in the confidence that actually a person has in the product. And again, that doesn't, I think, lie in the information requirements.
And still, what is your opinion about it?
Pretty much agree with Hans. It's really kind of, because you are in a dilemma. The dilemma is that from a regulatory perspective, you want transparency means a lot of information, a lot of detailed information. From a customer perspective, it's completely the contrary. So there, too much information is less transparency. Mm-hmm. And I talk about, there's a huge dilemma. Yeah, there's very, very little information in terms of numbers most customers can really process. And I would have wished for kind of a more broader layering so that you're able to show to the customer actual information, which is very little, but which is the key information. And this is, it's a tricky question, what is really key, what you need to take the decision. And on the other hand, in the background, provide all the transparency, but honestly, that no customer will read it.
Okay.
That's our experience.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, of course, we hope for something different with that. Just a last word for Bernard and then Olaf, please.
Yes, I mean, we don't have much time to discuss the kit, but I agree with Gabriel that it's kind of a huge step forward compared to the PRIPS kit for those who know this document. The issue indeed is just to find a way to communicate properly to investors the risk and the performance, but in the context of a long-term, pensions product. I agree with Olaf that it was a good thing that EIOPA is requiring that the PEPP kit show the retirement outcomes in real terms. So that's very good. We still think that on the other hand, the notion of guarantee, the question, this is a guaranteed product or not a guaranteed product, will be sufficiently clear to most people, because as still said, I mean, the guarantee is actually, or even Olaf, it's guaranteed, but after cost, and after inflation. And we kind of doubt that it'd be easy for people to understand. So if they don't go beyond this step and they say, okay, we take the guarantee, then they're not going to choose to go to this projection showing the retirement outcome in real terms. So if we could still clarify the notion of guarantee, what is effectively being offered, especially not protection against inflation, would be, still an improvement compared to the current version of the kit.
Thank you very much. And now just a very short last word from you, Olaf, please.
Okay, well, I think there's been a huge effort to make clear what the guarantee is, so I'm not sure why there's so much. I think EIOPA has done a very good job in trying to present a lot of complex information in as easy a way as possible. I think they've done, made great progress there. I think the one area we would say improving is one that they need to think of it in digital terms. So the layering and what you can layer and what should be on the top layer, I think there needs more clarity there, because the providers are worried to get in trouble with not providing something on the top layer and then later on being accused of not presenting it properly or something. So I think the digital version of that needs some further thought, but many of the basic ideas are quite clever and innovative. I think the one other area we would point to is that unfortunately, while EIOPA has done as good a job as I think they could do under the circumstances in terms of presenting information, some of the sort of the definitions of risk and return we think are quite complex still for the customer, and we're not sure how well that will work in practice. And the other big problem, and that's outside of their control, is the fact that as well as the PEPP requirement, there is also Solvency II and also IDD requirements. So the amount of data that the customer will actually have to see is much more than what EIOPA is focused on. And unfortunately, there's still a huge risk of data overload and overlaps, etc. And that's something wider that we hope the Commission will deal with over time.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much to you all. We must now finish our discussion. I think we could mention a lot of factors, either for pushing or making barriers to the PEPP. It is clear from our point of view, from BDB and Better Finance, we try that it will be a success, but of course it cannot be done against the will of the product providers. So thank you very much to you all, and I hand over to Axel for the conclusions.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, yes, I want to come to the conclusion that is not very easy from after such a vivid discussion that we had. After more than 2 hours with PEPP, we can say that at least we had an intense and very interesting discussion, in some parts quite eye-opening, and we got a closer look on PEPP. From the political perspective, we could notice some interesting things from the perspective of EIOPA from Gabriel. It was very clear that EIOPA is very well of her responsibility concerning to PEPP. EIOPA shows a very strong will to make PEPP a success. And PEPP is seen as an example of a successful cooperation of the different economical stakeholders. So, and in the end, I think this is quite interesting. Gabriel made a little plaidoyer for a strong capital markets supervision with a strong conduct of business. From the perspective of from the European Parliament, Dargos Bislaro gave us different views on PEPP, and he sees opportunities for some kind of a cross-border distribution and to find affordable products for all citizens in the EU. But he also sees difficulties, clearly the asymmetry of information, and the Green Deal has to deliver some good ESG products if PEPP should be a part of the puzzle piece within the Green Deal. Further discussion is needed for about the situation within the financial repression. Financial education is quite a very important point for from the perspective of the Parliament, and it is clear that Dargos Bislaro wants to raise awareness of pension, of the topic of pension within the European Parliament. And yeah, so after this more political discussion, we now had a more partly very technical discussion that revealed different hopes and objectives of the different stakeholders, and looking at the different things that these stakeholders have mentioned, and some topics have been very intense discussed. Bernard Delbecq made clear that the tax incentives is a crucial point to make PEPP a success or a non-success because of the comparison with other products of Pillar 3. The portability across borders is a chance to make a PEPP a success, but the cost cap seems to be quite very complicated from in some perspective for Bernard. And even, also Olaf Jones made clear that the cost cap is quite difficult, especially if you think about human experts that has to do the advice from his point of view. And he described several scenarios of failure, and tax also for him was quite very important. And concerning guarantees for Olaf Jones, he said that guarantees are easy to understand, but the other two participants of this panel, Till Klein and Hans van Metten, had quite a different point, a different view on the topic of guarantees. Till Klein made clear that different instruments for risk mitigation can be developed within the PEPP products, and this is quite positive for establishing a good PEPP market. The push for online distribution is, from his perspective, quite good to enforce to strengthen digital technology. And so he has quite a more optimistic view on PEPP. And Hans van Metten, from the more scientific view, he had quite a very different view on the tax question, because he said tax not to worry, it will become a product that will get nearly the same tax or exactly the same tax regulation on national level as the other products. He made clear that the cost cap of 1% from his point of view is much too high, and that there is within the level 2 we have a problem with the definition of guarantees. And he pointed out that the guarantee of Solvency II with 99.5% is quite difficult, and at this point, from my point of view as a German actuary, it is quite difficult to look at insurance guarantees as really 100% guarantees. And I think this discussion will follow us within the next months if we look at the situation of the German life insurance market. It was great to see that the whole audience was very keen in participating in the discussion. I can see 40 questions, and I'm very, very sorry that we couldn't include you all and just include a little bit of your question into the whole discussion. And but your will to be part of it gives me hope that despite criticism and pessimism over PEPP that I heard in some points, at least to keep the discussion about retirement provision running is quite a very good and very, very, very helpful thing. So that means thank you all for participating here. And I want to make a special thanks to Guillaume and to Jan for their presentations. And I hope that we can make these presentations available for everybody, because I think that was very, very interesting to see what Jan from the scientific perspective has said about the benefit statements. Again, a big thank you to Gabriel Bernardino and Dragos Pislaru for participating. It was very, very nice to get into this discussion. Thanks to Bernard Delbecq, to Olaf Jones, to Till Klein and Hans van Merten for this very encouraging panel that gives us hope that we will still have quite a lot of things to discuss within the next months and until PEPP is really developed and gets to the market. Thanks to Christian Gülich, to the whole technical team in Brussels, to the technical team here in Hamburg that make it all happen. This was quite very, 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 very interesting and a challenge to do this, to make this conference happen. I wish you all the very best, especially health for you and your loved ones. And I hope that someday we will meet in physical form again, perhaps at another conference about PEPP. So I say goodbye right now, but that doesn't mean that it is all over right now. As Guillaume already said, there will be a little video shown after my conclusion. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. And from my point of view, goodbye.
These days, you can enjoy your retirement for longer than previous generations did. Sadly, pensions fail to keep up and your living standards will suffer. But good news, the EU has a plan. A Pan-European Personal Pension Product, or PEPP. Properly implemented, the PEPP should shield your pension from fees and inflation. To avoid bad surprises, PEPPs offer capital protection. But will PEPP be able to deliver? The main dangers are fees and the rising cost of living, but PEPP's capital protection takes inflation into account, right? Not quite. Although Better Finance supports the PEPP project, the proposed capital protection is a scam. Your savings need protection from fees and inflation. Here's an example to highlight the scam. You set aside €100 in a PEPP product at the age of 25. You would expect to be able to at least withdraw that same €100 upon retiring at age 65, but that's not how it works. Here's the scam. Over those 40 years, your pension provider charged fees. Even a modest fee of 1% after 40 years will reduce your protected capital from €100 to €60. But the scam doesn't end here. Add inflation into the equation, even at just 2%, and your protected investment equates to only €27. Hardly fair, right? But not all is lost. We need to make sure that EU lawmakers take capital protection seriously. A true Pan-European personal pension with real capital protection would ensure bright futures for all. Stand up to this scam and demand real protection for your pension savings.
Sign the Better Finance petition on avaz.org and forward this video to your member of the European Parliament. To find your MEP's email address, go to the European Parliament website.
So thank you very much, everybody. I will join Axel in thanking everybody for an excellent conference and an excellent conversation on a very important topic. I also hope we can count on some support in signing our petition, which you can find on our website as well. So you can either follow the link to the petition from the YouTube video or on our website. In any case, we will be sending an update on this conference, a follow-up email with presentations, links, and other material. And I guess for your information, the conference was recorded, so we will also, it is available on our YouTube channel, but it will also be edited in a shorter format so that you can also enjoy the conference video afterwards. So with that, I thank everybody, and we hope to see you soon again. Thank you.